All right, we are live, and I'm wondering why I'm still hearing the music, and it's because I had the YouTube on. So, all right. Well, hello. Welcome to the show, Leaving Young Earth Creationism, and I'm here today with Jimmy Hill. So, Jimmy, I've known here for a few years on Facebook. So, we just talked live privately here the first time this week, but great guy. And Jimmy, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us when you left. How long ago has it been since you left Young Earth Creationism?
Yep, my name's Jimmy. I live in Southern Ohio. I'm just some hick trying to figure out how the universe works. I grew up Southern Baptist. I was baptized when I was 7. I went to church. I started falling out of, going to church regularly around high school, but I would still believe. But around the age of like 18, 19, I started having kind of more of a crisis of faith, if you want to call it that, where I started migrating to an old Earth creationist kind of point of view. And after that, it, went on to more skepticism. I started looking up YouTube channels, trying to get information, started really investing in trying to figure stuff out.
Okay, so it wasn't abrupt. I mean, you consider yourself a non-theist now, but it wasn't an abrupt, you went from Young Earth Creationist to non-theist. You made a gradual transition then. So.
No, because learning about young Earth creationism and why it's wrong, why the Earth is not 6,000 years old. The Earth being older than 6,000 years old doesn't mean that Jesus didn't exist or that there's no God, but that was me trying to test more claims and trying to figure out, what do I believe and why should I believe this stuff? And a lot of stuff I figured when I was being taught younger didn't really pan out when I started looking at the evidence.
Okay. What, now, were you homeschooled or public schooled? I mean, what role did education have in the reason you were a Young Earth Creationist to begin with?
I was never homeschooled. I always went to public school of some type, but when I was younger, I would go to Sunday school. I would go to church. I went to church probably 3 times a week because there was always some sort of service thing going on. My family really was into this stuff. But I didn't know where I was going with this one.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about going to church. You really weren't homeschooled, were, in public schools. Yeah. Were you exposed to evolution or the age of the earth or anything while you were in public schools? And how did you deal with that?
We would learn about geology and stuff like that. But when I was in high school, the time when everyone's taking biology courses, chemistry, and they would learn about that stuff, my school had a different option. And instead of taking a chemistry and biology credit, I could take 4 agricultural credits. And those classes were run by an FFA advisor, a friend of my mom. We knew him. I trusted him. And he didn't touch on evolution that much. We were talking about, zoning laws and mineral rights and country living, useful stuff, but evolution never really came up except as, it's a theory.
Okay. Well, FFA is Future Farmers of America, for people that might not know. Were you in a rural area then? Pretty rural?
Oh yeah, when I grew up in Wisconsin, when I went to high school, I lived in the country. I lived miles outside of the town. My next door neighbor was a cow farmer.
Okay. So rural America in some places kind of had a way out. They could take FFA classes instead of maybe a required science class and get through school without having to take classes on science. That's interesting too, huh? Were you ever exposed to, like, through the church? Were you exposed to any Young Earth literature, or did they talk about that in Sunday school, or was it all just kind of an assumed thing? I mean,
it was more of an assumed thing. Everybody, this is the story we're being taught, and we're going to take it as a literal event. Whenever it was discussed, it was never really in relation to evolution. Back when I was younger and we talked about this stuff, it was just more of, we believe the Bible, we take that as our starting point. This is the genealogies. We know how long ago this happened. It was a flood. And we just took everything in the Bible as, steps from God on how to learn the universe.
Well, we got a question. Scobie Shepherd asks, it fits right in with what we're talking about right now. So let's take the question. What was the hardest thing to let go of, or hardest belief to get over when you left Young Earth Creationism. I guess we're talking about before you transition to a total non-theist,
I really love the idea of people living with dinosaurs. In my head, I had kind of like this lost world mixed up view of history, I guess, where I used to believe that humans might have encountered and fought with dinosaurs. And that was a really cool thing to me as a kid. And now knowing that T-Rex and humans are kind of far apart, it's kind of disappointing, but we can still imagine.
Were you really into dinosaurs as a kid, or was it a real interest for you? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure just like all kids, I love Legos and dinosaurs and all the things that kids loved back then. Dinosaurs are cool. That's why a lot of Young Earth Creationism I see nowadays, that's what they're targeting with kids is, hey, look at Adam hanging out with the T-Rex. Look how cool this is. And they give the little toys to the kids.
Well, exactly. And when you see all the advertising for the Creation Museum and that, I mean, the billboards and things, it's always featuring dinosaurs. And Kent Hovind's Dinosaur Adventureland. I mean, they're using it because kids love dinosaurs, and it's a great way to get the kids to say, "Hey, Mom, Dad, let's go check this place out." So, or they know their kids are interested in dinosaurs, so there they want to take them. So exactly. All right. Now you visited the Ark Encounter too, didn't you?
Yep. I was up in Columbus one day, and me and my cousin had just gone to an art museum around Columbus. I was enjoying going to a museum. And the next day when I was heading south, I just looked up my phone. I was like, how far is the Ark Encounter? Because I had heard of it. I'd seen it on the news and stuff. I'd seen people talking about it on YouTube. I want to go there and check it out myself. I find out I'm only like 3 hours away. So
Wow.
I just went down there on a whim, and it was quite the experience.
Now, how long after it had opened were you there?
I went like a little over a year after the initial opening.
Okay. I'm looking here for an image to share.
While you're looking for that image, one thing I found, because when I was almost there, it stopped at a rest station, go to the bathroom, wash my hands before I get there. And I had heard a couple that obviously just come from the Ark Encounter of the Creation Museum talking about evolution. As I'm coming out of the bathroom, they're coming in. And I remember the guy saying, so they believe that this blob just sat around for millions of years and just started sprouting legs and arms for no reason. I heard the straw man, so I knew I was close.
Yeah. Now, when you went there, I don't know if they had all the stuff behind it like this or not. I mean, but it's an amusement park, I mean, they've got, of course, the petting zoo, but they got little rides and, different stuff like that for kids to keep them occupied, of course. And, but, one of the rides that I'm waiting for that I heard people talking about before they open is that Rapture ride where you just go up, but they haven't come up with that one yet, but yeah.
It didn't look that nice when I went there. It was kind of a cold, cloudy day. The parking lot was really big and empty. I had my place to myself, basically. I didn't see anyone until I got to the gift shop.
Right. Very cool. Was this there when you were there or not?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember specifically laughing at that.
Okay, so you were laughing by this point. I mean, you weren't really Young Earth, you're saying? Or
no. When I went to there, I was like, okay, I don't think this is true, but I'm going to go there with an open mind. Let's see the best that they got. When I got there, it was all the same arguments I had already seen and debunked. I'd seen all the slides on the walls. They just blew them up.
Right. Huh. Yeah, this got a lot of press. In fact, this is one of the things, I think I was the one that tipped off the Friendly Atheist on this one for his blog. Somebody had posted it on Facebook, I think, or maybe a forum that I was in. And when this first came out, it was just hilarious. I mean, you've got a little Colosseum there. You've got, I don't know, is that like a Carnotaur or something? Something's coming out of the wall there, and it's got these cone things on its it's just bizarre. So yeah, that was kind of crazy, and people definitely made a lot of fun of this for good reason. Yeah, I mean, there was never anything happened like that. And then you got a giant there, or a Nephilim or something there too. So, yeah. This is, I guess, one of the few live animals they have inside the Ark. And I've heard, I guess they switch back and forth between donkeys and alpacas or something there. So, yeah.
When I went, we had 3 goats.
3 goats. Oh, okay.
But yeah, those are the only animals. They have this little section. When I remember there was 3 goats and 5 people making sure the goats were clean and well fed. So the goats took up a lot of space in that Ark.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of goats. That's funny. All right. Dragnot made it. Going through the chat here. All right.
I don't know if you have a picture of it, but one of the creepiest things I saw at the Ark Encounter is you can see it in that Bill Nye walkthrough with Ken Ham. There's a room with a bunch of little kids' Noah's Ark books all around. And I was alone, so I know it had to be coming from somewhere. I found the speaker. They recorded crowd noises to make it sound busier than it was, and also this creepy children's laugh track that kept going on a loop. So when you're in the room, you hear creepy children inside in the hall. There's no one there.
That's funny. So just they had the sounds of children, and well, they have a lot of animal sounds throughout the Ark too, don't they? You know, a lot of
and the little boxes will have little things that squeak and shake, but there's no animals in the boxes.
So things actually move. Oh god, that's nuts. Huh. All right. Let me ask you. Let's see. We got. What was there one out of all the the different things that you learned? I mean, you started looking into it. You said you use YouTube, and I'm sure you went to some science sources and stuff. Was there one thing more than others? I mean, was it the age of the Earth? Was it the lack of feasibility of Noah's flood? I mean, what was there any one thing that you think that influenced you more than anything to leave Young Earth Creationism? Something you just couldn't believe after you found out some facts.
Well, yeah, so I went from young Earth creationist to an old Earth creationist. So the biggest thing was the age of the Earth, definitely. When I'm finding out more about how the planet works, how planets form, not the straw man that I've heard before, but when you actually go out, I'm starting to watch Cosmos. I'm getting interested in science videos. I start getting obsessively watching science lectures and documentaries just to try to learn a little bit more. And the more I find out, I just can't fit that narrative anymore with the evidence.
Okay.
And shortly after I go to the Ark Encounter, that's when I start going into fossil hunting. I try to, I want to test it myself. Can I see this myself? So I asked some people around the area that hunted. They drew out a little map. I went out to the road cuts and started finding fossils for myself.
That's really cool. What is that, like Pennsylvanian, or what age is that you have there? Isn't it around like 300? Huh?
Ordovician. So most of it is late Ordovician that I find, 450 million years, give or take.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We don't have a lot of stuff that age around here. I mean, we have just the layers are missing, in places, but we have a lot around the 300 to 310 million year old stuff. But I recognize a lot of the similar species and different types of animals in the fossils that I've seen of yours. Now, you've got some slides of those, don't you?
Yep. Let me bring up my screen share, see if this works. Yeah.
Once you go to share, I think I've got to add it to the thing, but we'll find out. I'm not seeing that yet.
Let's see. It's not giving me the option to share, and I'm not sure why.
Down at the bottom, does it say share screen?
It should be working now. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. Hold on. Let me add it to stream. There we go. I've got everything. So, yeah, there you go.
Is it presenting now?
Yeah. Are you seeing it? It's just showing your whole program, not the individual slide. Well, it does show the individual slide, and it's larger than the rest. So yeah.
Yeah. This is a Caesar's Creek state's way away from me. What they did is they got this dam, so they had to cut this spillway in. And when they did that, they exposed all the Ordovician rock layers. Right here, you can see just layer after layer after layer of all these storm deposits. And yearly cycles of, it gets cold, it gets hot in the winter and summer, things thaw, some crack, things get exposed, the rain starts eroding away. You start seeing different fossils over time. It's a great place to hunt. This is an example of mass mortality matrix. It's just basically a piece of the seafloor from 450 million years ago. And right beside that penny, that's the Isocetus trilobite, which is the state fossil. That was the first Isocetus trilobite I found. Very proud of that. Here's examples of what Kent Hovind would call clams in the closed position. But these are really brachiopods. And I really love this piece because I found it early. And it shows a lot of really well preserved specimens. You see a little gastropod over here too.
Can you make the image fill the window? Is that possible? Like you're viewing the single image and then share that image.
I thought I was, but let's see if I
we're actually seeing your entire program there. So
play. I thought you were seeing the whole thing because I had my preview up. It was showing the whole thing for me.
Oh, okay. That's weird. That's where maybe you clicked on the wrong application window. If it popped up in a separate window,
it might have opened up in a different window, and that's why you're not seeing it.
Yeah, because we're seeing them. It's just they're pretty small.
Let's see what I wish I knew how to start this.
You got some great fossils there. I mean, you've got some. Now, is that where you brought home a piece and then cleaned it later on? Went through with a toothbrush and dental picks and that kind of thing?
No, that is just rinsing off with water, a little rust must. I have not done any fine detail on this. This is how I'm finding these fossils.
Wow. Let's see.
I think there'd be a play option on this thing.
Yeah, check your other windows you have open and see if it's open in a separate window, and then maybe we can see if we can screen share that window instead. Because like right now, it says it's just showing the program.
Let me retry doing it.
Sure.
Entire screen.
I know we did a test run and it worked great.
Yeah, it never works great live, whatever reason. Yeah, I'm not sure why it won't pop up anymore. Because on my screen, it's showing full.
Yeah. And when you hit, oh, wait, hold on. Again, I can hit add to stream, but we're still seeing that. So you would have to go and stop sharing and then try to share again, but make sure you click on the full size window.
It won't let me. I'm not sure why.
Is the window reduced or do you have it up on your screen? It can't be reduced. When
I click preview to play, let's see. I wonder if that will work. I had the option to show my entire screen last time, and I think that's why. Oh, there we go. Now I can do it.
Hold on. It's going to ask me to add stream. Oh, now you got that window where you're looking. Oh, there we go. That's a lot better. Yay.
There we go. Now I know how to do this.
Brief rundown again.
Yeah. Caesar's Creek, it's a great place to go fossil hunting. All you got to do is go to the visitor center, sign a permit. Doesn't cost anything to do a permit. They just want to know who's going out there. Put your license plate in case of any trouble. You can take anything smaller than your hand, but of course I do look in other places where I can grab some bigger pieces. The reason why I have so many pennies in these shots is because a penny is a really good standard scale, so you can see how big these are.
Yeah, that's beautiful right there. That's why I was asking if you'd done prepping, because to find it just like that is awesome.
I always had this image that if I had to go fossil hunting, I had to crack these rocks open. I had to toothbrush everything. A lot of people do with some fossils, but these, I just found that as it is facing up at me on the ground, and I just picked it up.
Wow. Yeah, and there's several different species there too. So, and do you find like Bryozoa and crinoids and stuff in there too? Or?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Let's see, crinoids, brachiopods, bryozoan. We have the trilobites. Cephalopods is one of my favorite things to find. I put this image in because there's some claim that Kent Helvin makes all the time that I want to put to rest because it's wrong. He makes the claim that all a fossil tells you is that it died. And we can actually learn a lot from fossils. And one of the things that we can learn from fossils is their behavior. I can't pronounce this word, this one right here with the R.
Rucificus.
Yes, it's a trace fossil of a trilobite. A trilobite is named so because it has three pieces, the middle section, one on each side. What it will do is when it leaves a trace fossil is you'll look for two segments. That's one of the ways you can tell a difference between a trilobite and trilobite fossil. Trace fossil is how many segments it has. And in this one, I have a great example of that. This is the resting position of a trilobite as it was inside the soft seafloor bed, sucking up nutrients. And in the next photo, I'm just waiting for it to pop up. This one is very interesting because not only can you see the trilobite trace fossil very well right there, right here is another trace fossil of a burrow, possibly of an ancient worm. So as the worm was going along, trilobites were following this worm, sucking up the nutrients that it was leaving behind.
That is awesome. I wish we don't find trilobites. Well, I mean, you can find trilobites here in Arizona, but not very often. I mean, just again, the wrong age or the wrong environments for that age to find a lot of them. So,
yeah, this is one of my favorite fossils I ever found. This whole thing is actually, you can see the trilobite going through the seafloor and leaving as it was picking up nutrients, sucking it up as it along the way. It left little imprints. I have no idea why this is so flat over here, but over here you can really see, in between the segments, little bits each time as it was moving along. This is another brachiopod, but inside, when it was doing the mineralization process of becoming a fossil, it got replaced with quartz. And those are one of my favorite things to find.
Yeah, we find a lot with chert here in Arizona too. So, yeah. Yeah, that's really neat. All of a sudden, you'll be going along, and it's almost like we call it mudstone. I mean, it's really breaks apart quick, and then bam, you find something that's solid chert. What do we got here?
This is something that a lot of people will call colloquially as like a deer heart stone. This is the internal mold of a clam of a brachiopod, and usually you find, the shells, the outer part. But what happened with this is the inside got fossilized, the shells fell apart, but the inside stayed intact. And right here, that's where the hinge of the clam would be. So you can imagine a shell on this side, a shell on the underside. So not only do we find external molds of fossils, we can find internal molds. These are pretty common fossils you can find all around Ohio. We have brachiopods. This is an internal mold segment of a cephalopod. Cephalopods were, a lot of people know what ammonites are, those little swirled up shells. Cephalopods were basically this straight shell version of that. We have Rugo's horn coral right here, where they would sit on the tip and would have these feelers come out of this end. And the interesting about coral, finding coral in Ohio, is coral grows in warm, shallow seas, and they're not going to grow in turbulent floodwaters. And you find tons of these. And this is just another piece of interesting coral I found. This was my first trilobite I ever found. They look like little roly-poly bugs, and you can see by the size of the penny, sometimes they can be overlooked. This is not my fossil. I just use this as a reference pit. That is a hyperstome of a trilobite. This is one I did find, and the reason why this fossil is interesting I wanted to show is it's a trace fossil found with the fossil. I actually found these separately, but in the same location. When I put them together, they fit like a glove. Not only does this fossil show detail on the actual hyperstome, which is like a mouth bone of a trilobite, but we can see the external mold of it preserved, and you can see the detail preserved like a fingerprint of how that grew over time.
That's great.
Yeah. And these are just close-ups on each one. You can see the lines. It really looks like, a fingerprint or bark as it grows out. I think that was the last picture.
Last one. Okay, awesome. I was following the chat. Powpuck, you're saying that the Petoskey stones are getting rare in Michigan? That's crazy. I mean, they're actually fossilized coral, and then they get it gets worn smooth by the waves. I mean, the ocean, being in the ocean, not the ocean, the Great Lakes, but by wave action along the shoreline and stuff. And when I grew up in Michigan, we had a summer home between Port Huron and Lexington, Michigan, near a little town of Lakeport. And I had a neighbor, a girl that lived a couple doors down from us, that they lived there year round. And she literally had like hundreds, if not thousands, of Petoskey stones. And every time we had a storm, you'd just go down and find more. I mean, it just seems crazy to me. They're actually brought down from further north. The actual initial coral deposits is up towards Lake Superior, and I believe north of that. But the glaciers brought a lot of that stuff down with it, and left them down, throughout the Great Lakes. So, but that's interesting that they would be getting more rare. It probably depends on where you're at, though, too. So, yeah. But yeah, I've still got some Petoskey stones. I mean, the first fossil I ever found, that we found, definitely there in Michigan. Speaking of trilobites, I'm hoping I got that one here. Let me see. Give me a second. I wasn't prepared for this. Come on, where are you? Oh, here we go. This is a, maybe I could show it here if I get some light on it. You see that?
Yep. Maybe.
This is one from Wales. That I picked up at a show, and that is not the actual fossil. That is the imprint of the fossil. Like you were talking about, it's a cast. So that is not the actual fossil itself. It's a cast, but beautiful detail. I mean, amazing detail. One of the reasons I wanted to get one of those is I can't off the top of my head now remember the site, but it was one of the first places where by studying trilobites, and we're talking back in the 1800s, they were able to show the evolution from primitive, with fewer segments and things like that, going up to a more, I suppose you would say, advanced trilobite or more segments at least. And again, off the top of my head, I can't remember who it was or where it was, but I know it was Wales, and it was that same site. I remember at the time, getting on my phone and researching and going, oh yeah, this is the site. I got to have this fossil. So I had to buy it at a show. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. There's not just trilobite. There are thousands of species of trilobite. You got some with huge, long eyes. You got ones that are gigantic. You get these little roly-polies. There's just all sorts of them, and you can see this progression in the fossil record. Like you said, they become more complex. You see more variety, diversification of them.
Well, and there's at least 7 different distinct types of eyes and then variations of each. And then there's trilobites with no eyes at all. So when creationists say they appeared suddenly, blah, 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 no, there's a lot of variation. We see early ones with no eyes at all. I mean, it really is a great example of evolution in action there. I mean, trilobites are great to study there. So that is cool. Somebody's finding the same type of things you were talking about in near Toledo. So, I wish I were more into fossils when I was growing up in Michigan, because I was always interested in it. And it wasn't until, I went to college and started studying some things that I got more interested in it, but it wasn't too long after that I left the state. So I really missed out on a lot of that stuff. So
yeah. The interesting thing about the fossils in my area, especially Caesar's Creek, is we have found no fish fossils in Caesar's Creek in these layers. We don't find shark teeth. We don't find any whale bones. We don't find any aquatic reptiles or aquatic mammals. We don't find any mammals whatsoever in these layers. And that's something that the flood should predict. If there was a global flood, all these animals existed, then we should see a mixture of stuff. But we don't. We see a sea without fish.
And, the creationists a lot of times will also use the excuse, well, the reason we see those lower and we don't see mammals and things in those layers, we see them higher up, is they were at the bottom of the ocean. Of course, they were buried first. But as you go up through the layers, we can find corals, reefs of corals in layers that are a few million years old, not 350, 450 million years old. It doesn't, again, they use it as an excuse to get through that moment by telling you that that's why we find them there without the other things, but we find them way up higher in the geologic column too. So when you look at it overall, it doesn't make any sense.
And corals are especially important because corals only grow in very certain perimeters. The temperature has to be right. You have to have enough sunlight to get down there. They have to be a warm, shallow sea. So when you see them multiple layers, and it doesn't make sense in that flood narrative.
Mm-hmm.
One layer and one layer only.
We've got a creationist asking a question here. I'll take that. Should there be a time limit for Cambrian explosion excuses? Well, the Cambrian explosion was originally designated at maybe 20 million years. Now, depending who you talk to, because so much more has been discovered, they're talking 40 to 50 million years. And we have found so much evidence of precursors to Cambrian life in the layers below it now that we didn't have before. We have what's called the Avalon explosion. So creationists should Google that too, where it was another major radiation of life prior to the Cambrian. Cambrian explosion, there's no excuses for it anymore. It's just pretty well understood. And, it was that one point where life developed and evolved, and we started seeing competition between different life forms in the same environment. And we had the arms race, and we started seeing a massive diversification of life where, before that, it was more single-celled. There wasn't competition, and it's pretty easy to explain why at that point we saw what we did. All right. So what else we got? There was some other things I wanted to ask you. Okay. Were you on social media at the time that you were going through this change from young Earth to old Earth to non-theist, and what influence did what you saw and interacting with people on social media have on that?
Yeah, it's when I was really kind of transitioning. YouTube came out in 2006, but I didn't really get into it like 2008, 2009, when I was 18, 19, just leaving high school. So YouTube is still a little early in those days, but I start coming across different channels, things that challenged my beliefs, and I just wanted to go into it, not thinking I'm right, you're wrong, but just more like thinking it's like, okay, how could I be wrong? Let's see what the evidence is. I try to keep an open mind when I go into things. Yeah, and YouTubers, like it was still a little later, but like Dark Matter 2025, Hugo and Jake, those guys had a big influence on me on just trying to figure out different viewpoints. And hey, that does make sense, and I should question that. And so I don't just take it at their word, but I love that they challenged and questioned them things that I believed.
Very cool. Someone had asked me to mention external locus of control versus internal, where I guess to just briefly summarize what that is you're relying. I don't know how did you. I had the definition of it earlier, and it all made sense. I'm not into psychology like that, so I don't have it on tip of my head. Okay, the degree to which people believe that they have control over the outcome of events in their lives as opposed to external forces beyond their control. So when you were religious, I mean, I guess it makes sense that, yeah, my phone started talking to me, like I must have said something that cued it to do that. It was answering the question that I asked. But yeah, I mean, when you were religious, you had more of that external um, uh, locus of control. You would have blamed external factors. I mean, you understand what I'm asking there? So.
Yeah, when I was still religious, when I was in high school, I had panic attacks all the time. If anybody watches this that went to high school with me, you know what I'm talking about. I would hyperventilate, I would lock up, I would be so overwhelmed that I couldn't handle anything. I just kind of broke down, and it would send me to the emergency room a lot. I really kind of felt powerless a lot. But as I got older, I started kind of taking control of that. When I get anxious now, I understand that this is psychological. It's not something physical going on with me. And I choose to be in control. And I think that's what the difference is. I used to not feel in control, but now I make that choice to be in control. And now I either let it ride out, or I just tell myself, you know what's going on, Jimmy. Don't worry about it. Just breathe, do your breathing exercises, and taking control of your own life, understanding that you are the one making the choices instead of you are being on a track that God has laid out for you. You have the steering wheel. You can make those choices for yourself. It made me a better person to go through that and take control of my own life and understand that, you know, you don't have to be helpless. You always have a choice in how you react to things.
Well, and if you have this external locus of control, you're less. They say you're less apt to go out and make the effort needed to learn things that for yourself, really, because you feel like it isn't going to really make as much of a difference if your life is being guided by something else, or basically a lot of what happens to you is out of control. It's out of your hands. So you're not going to make the effort to better or make you learn things yourself that may help you be a better person or understand more about the world around you.
Yeah.
So makes sense. I gotta show you something that I found that I was looking for new material, and I went through Eric Hoven's channel recently. He hasn't done a lot lately, but I did find a clip I wanted to share with everybody here and get their feelings on this. Let's listen to this intro to one of his recent videos, just a short clip.
In order to be a true scientific theory, creationism would have to be falsifiable and have predictive power. Because it has neither, it must be thrown out of the scientific community.
He's such a ham, isn't he? Yeah. You what?
He's not as smart as his father, but I think he comes across as more friendly.
Friendly, but half the time I don't think he believes what he's saying. I mean, he repeats a lot of what his father does, but I just don't know that he really believes it. He just memorizes things and repeats them. But I mean, creationism isn't falsifiable. I think his answer was, well, if Jesus came down and told me I was wrong, then it would be falsified. Well, how do you answer that? I mean, but yeah, creationism is definitely not falsifiable. It's not testable. I mean, you can't test the hypothesis. I mean, there's no way you can scientifically look at it and test it. It relies on the supernatural intervention. And it's basically
I talk to people on Facebook all the time about trying to falsify the model, and everything can just be overcome with God did it, God helped it, magic. That was magic. How did the boat hold together? That magic. How did he get all the magic? Where did the water come from? That was God. Everything can be overcome with a supernatural explanation. So there's no real way to call it scientific. If that's everything is with God, then it's a supernatural event. We can't test that.
Mm-hmm. I see a comment about another fossil. Let me grab one of those. Hold on. I got so many fossils right here. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Somebody was saying he says, Gooba, tell us about stromatolites. Here's a stromatolite right here. You can see the base. Let me hold it the right way. That's the base there. I don't know if you could really see the grooves that well on there. Maybe if I get the light just right again. Hold towards the light. Too much light. There we go. Now you can see the grooves around it, right?
Yep, yeah. I have a couple of those too.
Yeah. This one's from Wyoming. I think this one's about 1.5 billion years old. It's a complete stromatolite, small one. I've got some sections of the ones from Michigan, which are about 2.4 billion years old, from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan there, that are really cool, amazing. So, yeah, somebody else has one in front of them. Well, let's. I'm going to look too on the YouTube. We're on a little bit. It's funny. I think you guys. Well, it probably ought to work out okay. You guys, we see your comments a little late though, and then you see our responses a little late. But yeah, it's just this program, the way it works. But it's not bad. I'm getting used to it. I like StreamYard. That's the name of this. If anybody's wondering what program we're using here. Now that Google Hangouts has gone away, we all got to find something, huh? So, yeah. A fossil of a coral that is flipped inside out. That would be interesting. Oh, I got my Rottweiler going crazy in here. She's coming after one of the cats. So, so all this has to be more exciting than being a YEC-er to your guest. I hope so. Yeah. Go back to the comments here. Who's going to run Dinosaur Adventureland after Kent? Well, we know it won't be Eric.
No, that relationship seems to have been burnt.
Yeah, pretty much. They just waited till he got out of prison, and yeah. Bring up my schedule too. I wanted to let people know what we got coming up. Got some really cool guests coming up too. I mean, I'm really happy with the lineup. All right, you guys are asking the creationists all the questions.
One thing I do want to, because this is about leaving creationism, I would really want to talk to people who are still creationists who may be thinking about it or doubting at all. It's okay to question things. It's okay to change. I don't feel like I lost anything when I no longer believe. I feel like I've grown. You know, that part of my life, that's still part of my life. I'm never going to forget it, but I've been able to do so much more now that I have a wider perspective of life. I can still put on my God glasses on and talk and think of the way that I used to. I understand where a lot of people are coming from. And this is for, I guess, like the edgy atheists out there. They're people too. They don't like being told they're wrong. They don't want to be told that they have to change their entire lifestyles. This is kind of a tough thing to go through sometimes. What I went through wasn't easy, but it was worth it.
How did it affect friends and family? I mean, was that an issue? with you? I mean, because you're from a rural area, and I know a lot of times the church is a huge part of social life for people, not just because you believe or not. It's part of a social life. And then other people, have some family members sometimes that are pretty adamant. And I know people who it's affected their relationship with their family.
My mom's still religious, but she still loves me. We can discuss that. She respects that I have my own point of view. My dad, he's an atheist, so he's pretty much on the same page as I am. Some of my family is religious, but I don't really talk to my family about this stuff. This is kind of my own personal adventure through, just learning. And I tell a lot of people, like family members that don't like that, the way I am so much now, is say I do go back to being a believer. God has given me the best tools to talk to non-believers because I was a non-believer.
It says, here's one here. What does your guest think about old Earth creationists? Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I have no problem with people believing in like an old Earth creation. If I look at the evidence, if you think that there's a God behind all the stuff that happened, I can't say one way or the other, so I have no problem with it. The only issue I have with is people misrepresenting the data and saying that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and misrepresenting what evolution is. The strange thing about young Earth creationism is they actually need micro and macro evolution. What they're really arguing over is universal common ancestry and the time that took place. They believe in evolution. They just believe in like a hyper, super, super fast form of evolution. And they don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. One thing about the old Earth creationists that I more recently found out, I always thought, well, they accept evolution, sort of, but the Earth isn't 6,000 years old, but they believe. But I mean, there's a difference between theistic evolutionists who believe that a god or their god, started everything in motion and let it go from there. Then there's old Earth creationists that I've run into now, people like Fuzz Rana and Hugh Ross and Todd Wood. Well, no, Todd Wood's young Earth. I'm sorry, but they believe that like humans are a separate creation from the rest of the animal kingdom. And I've done some videos on Hugh Ross and Fuzz Rana where I can understand a lot of like the geology part they get, but when it comes to evolution, they start believing that yes, there was diversification of life and apes came from earlier primates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then boom, humans are a special creation, so.
The way I see it is, at least they're not as wrong as young Earth creationism. I can agree with you, but you're doing better than the young Earth creation by far.
Yeah. Here's one for you. Was there, and we think we talked about talking about this. Was there something, the best evidence, or one specific thing that made you change your mind?
Yeah. Well, from young Earth creationists to old Earth creationists, it's going to be the age of the universe, the age of the Earth. That's the biggest thing to hear. But just changing my mind scientifically about the history of the world, it's got to be these fossils, because I'm physically touching these. I'm going out and looking for themselves. I know they're not getting faked. I'm picking these up myself and investigating them. I have access to this information. This is really good evidence that the global flood did not happen.
Yeah. What else we got? Looking for more questions. I can go over my schedule just a little bit here too. Next week, September 16th, I've got Erica Matthews. Gutsick Gibbon is her YouTube channel. You guys need to check that out. She's brand new. She's just started a YouTube channel. Former young Earth creationist, still theist, but has some really good stuff. She's brilliant. David Ledoux is coming up September 23rd. Wayne Fillmore, September 30th. Adam A., her channel, another former YEC. Well, these are all former YECs. Great new YouTube channel. I've got Dom Turkett. Dom has a Fishing with Dom channel in Michigan. So, and he and I have some mutual friends from way long time ago through the fishing stuff. Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy is going to be October 21st. Dapper Dino, October 28th. And I'm also talking with a couple other people, Holy Kool-Aid being one of them too, scheduling in November. So it's going to be really cool. All right, we got some folded mountain range. How do YECs explain it? Oh, that's kind of a good question. Did that pop up on my StreamYard here yet? No, I was looking over on the... Oh, here's one for you. Here, go ahead.
We didn't have any overt creationist content in my high school. I went to Baraboo High School in Baraboo, Wisconsin. We were just a typical high school, but one of the teachers there was obviously a young Earth creationist. And I remember him talking just very briefly about evolution. He didn't bring it up, but someone asked about it one time, and he said, my personal belief is like you take the parts of a remote control, you put it in a box, you shake it up, and you have fully charged batteries. It's all put together. When I heard that, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know at the time why it was wrong. Just that I didn't know the term straw man back then, but if I had, I would have said something about it. I just kind of sat quietly in class going, that's not right. I don't know why, but that's not right.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question for me. Folded mountain ranges between plates. You know, YECs explain it by the Earth, the layers had to have been wet to be folded like that. I mean, that's usually the answer you hear, which really makes no sense because most of those layers are not just sedimentary layers, they're metamorphic. You know, I mean, a lot of these chevron type folds and things like that, they show cracking, they show metamorphism. Things like fossils are not in the original state, or they're not there anymore because the rock has become metamorphic. And so they try to explain it away by saying the rock had to have been wet when folded, which again makes no sense. It doesn't. It has to be under heat and pressure below the crust of the earth is how we understand it. So that's how they explain it away, but it's not a good explanation. So, all right. Looking back now, this is for you. But you know, you never really were a super advocate of young Earth creation. You were raised that way, but you weren't out preaching it, right? I mean,
yeah, I never argued in favor of it. It was
right.
just the position I held until I started hearing people arguing about it. And when I started hearing people arguing about it, I wasn't in a position to go one way or the other to try to support either position. I listened for a really long time. I never really argued for it. It was just something I had believed.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question for you.
Any advice I can give you to your Christian family would be just try to focus on maybe on Genesis, and instead of saying why it's wrong, ask them how it works. That's kind of like what I do with people. Like with the Nephilim thing, it says that the sons of God mated with the daughters of men, and that's what we have the Nephilim. They were before and after the flood, and just ask them, it's like, well, how did that work? Was everything wiped out in the flood? How did they appear after the flood? Were they on the ark? And just ask them questions and have it be more of an organic conversation rather than a confrontation or a quiz or interrogation.
Here's a question. The ultimate goal of YEC, Young Earth Creation. Well, you know, there are Young Earth Creationists and there are Young Earth Creationism salesmen. So there are two different things there. Some Young Earth Creationists may honestly believe that it would be a better world if everyone thought the Earth was 6,000 years old and people rode dinosaurs, because, you know, they believe that their religion is everyone should belong to their religion. But then there's other people out there like Eric Hovind and some others that I believe are more creationism salesmen. When will they be satisfied? When they no longer have to work? You know, I don't know, to make money off of it. Some of these people make an awful lot of money off of it. But Hour late again. Sorry, Robert. Yeah, it's 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So divergent plates. Oh, divergent plates. Okay, you're talking specifically about that. Yeah, I don't know that I don't know. I've never seen one pick an example. Usually, what the young Earth creationists will do is they pick an example of, like there's a famous photo in the Alps of, extreme folding and stuff, and they just say the rock has to be wet. I've never really seen them mention divergent plates. How do they explain it? I think they avoid it. I don't think they would pick the example. If they would be using it, again for the wet layers thing and Noah's flood. But I've never really seen them. Oh, here's a question. What's the origin of information in DNA? We don't know exactly how life began. We know when it began, approximately, or when it began by, at least. But, there's nothing wrong in admitting we do not know and do not have all the answers. It's much more exciting to try to find real answers than it is to just make things up and believe it all was spoken into existence 6,000 years ago.
That's probably one of the things that helped me is just admitting sometimes you don't know the answer, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Back in that mindset, you had to have an answer, and the answer was usually God.
Yep. Looking for more questions here. So we're a little bit behind. That's a good question. Have you read Sapiens?
No, I haven't read Sapiens. I'll have to look that up, put it on my list.
Book. If you Google it, it's actually online as a PDF somewhere, but I mean, it's really hard to read that way too. But I think you can get it for around $15 on Amazon. It's an excellent book. I mean, it literally goes from, say, 7 million years ago for human origins to present. It talks more about other things than evolution. It talks also about the origin of cognition. The cognitive revolution, if you want to call it that, talks about early civilization more so than that other. But it's just a really good book. In fact, the origin of when we know that we became human anatomically, modern humans, by around 200,000 years ago, pretty much indistinguishable from what we are today physically. But what I'm researching now, or more reading about now, because I'm always reading a book, is about that cognitive revolution. We know that by 40 to 50,000 years ago, something had changed. And about the time the Neanderthals went extinct, 37,000 years ago, right after that, with modern humans, we start to see things like Chauvet cave paintings, religious figurines, things like that. And that's what I'm really interested in now. How do we get to that point? No one's explained it yet, but there's some really good books out there on the topic. And that I find really interesting, because it's one aspect of human evolution that I hadn't really studied much before. I'm real familiar with the fossil record, but now we're not dealing with fossils. We're dealing with archaeology, the record of artifacts and that, and trying to apply it to what was going on inside their minds at the time, which is really neat. All right. Well, we've been an hour. So last questions, anybody? Get them in quick. I want to thank you, Jimmy. This has been great.
So, yeah, I appreciate you letting me come on, tell my story. Hopefully other people are encouraged to question beliefs and think about the evidence. If anybody else wants to come on and tell their story, Bill's a really nice guy. I'm sure he'd message you and talk to you.
Yeah, and Again, creationsciencefiction.com is my website. The show schedule is on there. A lot of good information on there on refuting creationism, but also documentaries and lectures on evolution and the origin of the Earth and astronomy and just all kinds of different things. So it's a learning resource and not just a refuting creationist resource. Yeah, there's a question on Neanderthals there. How do creationists explain the Neanderthals have different Y chromosome? Young Earth creationists believe that Neanderthals are the same as us, the same species. A lot of them, like he says, pre-flood humans. They don't explain why the Y chromosome is different, other than those were not descendants of Adam, maybe, or not. I'm sorry, of Noah. You know what I'm saying? They say we're all descendants of Adam, but these Neanderthals were, not descendants of Noah. So that's why the Y chromosome is different. But then you've got the old Earth creationists saying that Neanderthals are as different from us as a chimpanzee. So two different ways that they look at it.
That reminds me that you might find this funny about the Neanderthals, Nephilim, and Bigfoot. Someone came into my store recently and we were talking about Bigfoot, and he decided to tell us what he thought about it. He believes that the Nephilim, aka the descendants of Cain, they became Bigfoot. That was a fun conversation I had in that store that day.
I've heard Nephilim, but never descendant of Cain. Yeah. Paul says, has any creationist ever admitted that some dinosaurs have feathers and other avian features? Not that I'm aware of, really. I mean, I know Ken Ham had a fit over the baby T-Rex with feathers on the postage stamp that came out a couple of weeks ago. I'm not aware of any of them that really admit that. I mean, well, they would have to admit. I mean, if they're going to, we know some dinosaurs have feathers from fossils, but I don't know specifically of any that what they say about that. I'm not sure. Here, ESE. How do YECs apply the concept of kinds? Extremely large groups, crustaceans, and extinct groups like trilobites. They would probably say there's a trilobite kind. They're probably not going to lump them in with others. What creationists will do is look at an animal based on physical characteristics and assign it in their mind to a kind. Not realizing that if they did that with everything alive on Earth, there'd be no way any of it would fit on an ark. All of it would fit on an ark. Answers in Genesis, to the best of my knowledge, the last time I looked at their website on how many kinds of birds, they were up to about 23 or 24 kinds of birds. Okay. Again, wherever it's convenient, they separate it into a different kind. And, it's just because they can do that. There's no science behind it. Yeah.
When I went to Ark Encounter, I saw a plaque and they actually define kinds. And they define kinds as a group of related animals that are not related to other animals. So I guess trilobites are all related to trilobites. They're just not related to anything else. It's a very vague term that they just group things, whatever's convenient for them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, this is where he said it should have been art instead of art. Instead of R, it should have been art. Yeah, I'm just recently looking into, with all this other stuff, the Aboriginals. But yeah, 50 to 60,000 years ago, well, there was some art. I mean, if you call it, it was primitive stuff. There was some other art at that time too. I mean, we're finding real primitive stuff in Europe at that time. In Africa, there's art. We are definitely finding stuff at that time, but nothing on the level of what's, like I said, the Scobie cave paintings. That is a whole different, to me at least, a whole different level than some lines or stick figures or an arrangement of red dots, But yeah, there is what we could call art prior to that for sure. But, I have on the wall in front of me, I've got a replica of the 4 horse heads from the Scobie cave. And when I look at that, I see abstract thought, but I see attention to detail. I see a whole different thing, something that a modern human today would consider well-made art. And then I see things from 50,000 years ago and older that I would just have to say are primitive compared to that. So, skip over the creationist stuff. Bigfoot, Mormonism, interesting. It could be. Yeah, some of them say that trilobites aren't extinct because something looks like it today. The roly-poly bugs and other things. I've heard of that.
Yep. I would love to have a little living trilobite in a fish tank, but sadly, you just can't find them.
Mm-hmm. Someone's asking me about more YouTube geology. Yeah, Wildwood Claire was amazing. I'm not familiar with Purple Dan. I'll have to check him out. I don't know. I mean, there is some cool stuff out there. Maybe check out the documentary page on my website, because I know that I've got stuff on Age of the Earth and geology on there, and some of the people have other content, a lot more content than what I've posted. But all right. Well, the armadillo is a giant trilobite. Yeah. Armadillos are actually pretty closely related to sloths. So, yeah. Have I shown the artwork on my site? No, I haven't done anything yet. I mean, I'll probably start blog posting about some stuff. Like I said, I'm reading a book called The First Signs right now, which is really interesting. And what the author, she visited, I think, like 70 of these early art sites throughout the Middle East and Europe and Africa to do her research for this book. So people talking about Purple Dan, I don't know him. I am going to have to really check him out now. Now you got me curious. So, all right. Well, listen, it's been great. We're going to wrap it up. I'm going to put a link. For some reason, when I do this stream art, I can put all that info in this video, and then once it goes live, I have to go back and do it again once it's published. So, but I will add a link to Jimmy's YouTube page or YouTube in the video description, along with, again, my website, the weekly show, and yeah, it should be great. And another good show. Thank you. I hope to see some of you guys next week.
Yeah. See you guys later.
All right.